Under students, Mr. Williams back, taking you through our final subsection of notes here for Section 12, the Stagnant 1970s. We're looking at the presidential election of 1980. No surprise, the Democratic Party nominates the incumbent, Jimmy Carter, and his vice presidential running mate, Walter Mondale, to run on behalf of the Democratic Party for the presidential position in 1980. The Republicans nominate the individual that came in second for the nomination in 1976, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan goes ahead and taps George H.W. Bush as his running mate in 1980. Ronnie Reagan had been serving as the governor of California through the 1960s, did a relatively successful job governing that large state. George Herbert Walker Bush had been dabbling in Congress and also in the areas of intelligence. So he had been working in the Pentagon for previous administrations. So pretty strong ticket on behalf of the Republican Party, running against Jimmy Carter and Walter Mondale. And again, it's an interesting election because the overall attitude, the overall feeling, the vibe across America is one of gloom, okay? Pessimism and a very, very low level of patriotism. Not many people are proud to be an American at this moment. We're getting pushed around on the national, international stage, and we've yet to really triumph the economic downturn that we'd been experiencing for several years, okay? So it's going to be an interesting election cycle, all right, as Ronald Reagan has several things to attack Jimmy Carter on. And Jimmy Carter has some successes that he can note. He has some failures that he has to try to talk his way around. But he also, again, has laid the groundwork in his mind and some other individuals' minds to, again, potentially, all right, I lost my video there, okay, potentially convince enough Americans to reelect him in 1980. A little background here on Ronald Reagan, and we'll talk more about President Reagan in Section 13. I already mentioned to you that he had spent time as the governor of California, but it wasn't as if he was a career politician. Okay, many of the individuals that have taken over as president, or we've noted in American politics throughout U.S. history, have experience in Congress at one level or another, have experience as an executive in one level or another. So he had that when he ran and served as governor of California. But before that, Ronald Reagan really wasn't involved in politics. He was a Hollywood star, okay? He was a B-list celebrity through the 40s and 50s, and eventually started hosting some television shows in the 1960s. He becomes a Barry Goldwater conservative. So Ronald Reagan, for the most part, true blue patriotic American, okay? Had probably more left-leaning liberal-like ideas early on in his life. Had served as a leadership position, directing the Screen Actors Guild at a time when many Americans were experiencing and living through the Red Scare. So he's got experience that draws him towards conservatism. And then as he starts to think about the direction in which our nation's government is going in the early to mid-1960s, he goes full-bore conservative, okay? Starts providing a lot of speeches from conservative tones and rhetoric, and eventually serves as governor of California, loses the nomination race in 1976 to Gerald Ford, barely. And many historians and politicians at the time, after Ford gets the nomination, Ford waves Reagan down to kind of give an impromptu speech, and Reagan just kicks butt. And many people stand there at the convention hall in Kansas City and go, uh-oh, maybe we nominated the wrong guy. So Ronald Reagan is going to get nominated in 1980, and he is going to ooze patriotism and ooze optimism. All right, he's going with that. He's going with that angle. Okay, going with that angle as he's running against Jimmy Carter, and it's understandable because Carter has just wrapped up the crisis and confidence speech. We are looking inept and weak in regards to the Iranian hostage crisis. So Reagan's going to kind of play, the alternative in that situation. Many Americans like that alternative. Many Americans are ready to believe in their chief executive again, ready to believe in their national government again. All right. Reagan promises cuts in taxes to allow more money for the U.S. of A. To start flooding the economy with some liquid, all right, some cash. Promises to rebuild the military, that we're going to take a stronger, more aggressive stance on international affairs. And he's also going to cut government spending. Okay, this is the thing that Reagan hints at and mentions time and time again. And ultimately, he asked one question of the American public in the election cycle of 1980: are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And if that answer is no, then elect me. And under my guidance, we will have you better 4 years from now than you are currently, than you were 4 years prior. Carter is going to have, and it's going to be mentioned in this video again, recommend that you watch this, okay? Carter is going to have an interesting situation where he's not really going to campaign as he's handling the Iranian hostage crisis. So he effectively has, kind of a hold it down in the White House approach to the election in 1980, which makes it tough on Reagan as well. He can't necessarily go out and bash Jimmy Carter because he's busy being president. He can't bash him because he's not campaigning, because he's busy doing his presidential duties. But the failure to handle the Iranian hostage crisis in a successful fashion by Jimmy Carter, and ultimately the patriotism and optimism and just the, in general, fresh alternative approach that Reagan offers sways many Americans to vote for Ronnie Reagan, and he is going to dominate an electoral landslide of 489 to 49. Ronald Reagan is going to be your next president of the United States of America starting in January of 1981. That does it for Section 12. Okay, that does it for Section 12, the stagnant 1970s. We are now going to transition from America being a stinky place to live, all right, to a time of a rebirth, a revitalization, okay, a resurgence in the U.S. of A. And that's going to be covered in Section 13, Reagan and the American Resurgence, okay? That's it. All right, good job.